What is up, guys? Team Yugi Feels here. I wanted to start off the video by showing you guys the new spell ground that I got today. Just came in the mail, fresh off the press, brand new playmat, the Dogmatika. We're going to be doing a deck profile today. As you can see, it is our homeboys Altergeist. We haven't done a deck profile for Altergeist in a while, so I figured I would show off my new list. So before we jump into it, make sure you guys go ahead and smash that subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, and obviously give the video a thumbs up. That way I can produce more cool and awesome content for you guys, just like the video you're watching now. But let's go ahead and jump right on into this. Alrighty, so we're going to be starting with the main deck per usual, and I want to point out that I'm actually going to be doing the deck profile a little bit differently today. I'm going to be going through the engines rather than monsters, then spells, then traps. I just want to try this, and you guys can tell me if you like it. If you don't like it, I might make a poll on it on the community tab. I'm not sure yet, but I'm just going to try and put this out as an idea for a possible way for me to do profiles more in the future, rather than just doing monsters, then spells, then traps, and instead doing engines. That way you guys can see all the engines in each deck. But start off with the Altergeist Multi-Faker, our 3-of that is definitely a mandatory 3-of. This card's fantastic. It's a special summon from hand and then a special summon from deck after you play a trap card, which is just insane. The card is just ridiculous. It's so powerful, and it puts in a whole lot of work for you. So you got to play the triple faker. Now you play the 3 marionetter. This is your kind of your Stratos in a way, kind of not, because like it doesn't search, it just sets your Altergeist traps from your deck, which is really good, obviously. And then the ability to get rid of another Altergeist or itself to bring back an Altergeist is also very strong, because if you get a multi-faker in the grave, you can always revive it, and then you can get its effect, which is very good. Obviously multi-faker is just a fantastic card, so the more you can resolve its effect, the better. Then we have 3 copies of Meliseek. Now, most people know that Meliseek does attack directly, which is obviously a very important part, because his secondary effect makes it so that after he hits the damage, you can just send a card from your opponent's field to the graveyard, which is pretty good. Does target, so you can't really out a Dragoon with it, but that's okay. And then additionally, when it goes from field to graveyard, you can search for an Altergeist. So you can just normal it, link it off, and then you get to search for a multi-faker for free. So technically that ups our deck's count to 6 multi-faker, which is really good. Then we have 2 copies of Silquotis. This is basically your compulse for the deck. It's a really good card, and then when it goes to the grave, you get out Altergeist Trap from grave to hand, which is pretty good too. It's just a good card. Helps you set up your interruptions. You special it off of your multi-faker, then you bounce the multi-faker back to hand with the Silquotis, and then you just get to basically loop everything over and over again. And then the last Altergeist card that we play for monsters is 1 Altergeist Conquery. Basically, your opponent's going to attack while you have an Altergeist card. You're going to special summon this, negate the attack, and negate monster effect on the field, which is pretty good. And it's got 2400 defense, which is actually a pretty good defense stat. So, gotta love that. Then the trap cards for the Altergeist engine, we play 3 copies of Personal Spoofing. This basically, you're going to shuffle an Altergeist card from your field or your hand into the deck, and then search for another Altergeist card. So basically, you can do this immediately on activation, and you can get a multi-faker from your deck. So that now ups our deck's count to 9 copies of multi-faker, which is fantastic. Then we have 2 copies of Protocol. This basically makes it so your Altergeist cards that you do activate on your field can't be negated. It's also a monster negate by tributing an Altergeist, which is really strong. Just having more and more negations for your opponent's monsters is really good in this meta especially, so keep that in mind. Then the last Altergeist trap that we play is 1 Manifestation, which is essentially Call the Haunted, and because Konami was smart enough to do the errata back when they did, it makes it so now you can activate this, target whatever card in your graveyard, chain Silk to bounce it, and you still get the summon and the monster sticks on the board. So that's actually very important to note, because that will come up every once in a while. Moving on, we now have the Dogmatika engine, because we are playing Dogmatikas in here, because this engine is really powerful. So we're playing one Ecclesia and one Fleur-de-Lis. The Ecclesia is obviously there for the searching of your other Dogmatika cards, such as Fleur-de-Lis and another card that we'll get to momentarily. And then obviously our Fleur-de-Lis is there as a monster negation, which is very good. It also helps boost your Ecclesia's attack and its own attack when you do use the other effect to boost their stats. So keep that in mind. That's actually very relevant too. Then we play 3 copies of Nadir Servant, because grabbing more of your Dogmatika cards back or just searching them out in general is very, very powerful, and being able to send cards from your extra deck to the grave can be useful in some scenarios as well, so keep that in mind. And then for the last Dogmatika setup we have is 2 Dogmatika Punishment. I opted not to play Maximus. I didn't see a reason to. It's just not that great in retrospect, comparing it to, you know, your Fleur-de-Lis and obviously your Ecclesia. So I didn't play Maximus. We just used the Punishment as our big searcher next to Fleur-de-Lis, because we're just going to want to do as much as we can as far as popping our opponent's board goes, and that's exactly what Punishment is there for. Then moving on to the hand traps next. We don't play a lot of hand traps in the main deck, which is okay. We play 3 copies of Ash Blossom and 3 copies of Imperm. I feel like most people figured that Imperm was going to be in here because it is Altergeist. And the cool part is now, because we got the Cyber Dragon or Cyber Strike, whatever it is, the structure deck, now Imperms are really cheap, and Altergeists are getting reprints in the next gold set that's coming out soon, which also means that this deck is basically going to be one of the most budget decks that you can play in the game, and you know, it's going to be a fantastic deck for people who don't want to drop several $100s. You could probably just drop $100 and have the deck be pretty good now, which is really, really cool. So keep in mind that the reprint of Imperm is really, really good, but Imperm is solid against a lot of stuff. It also plays around talents, which is very important, because a lot of people are going to be playing talents. A lot of people are playing talents, so you got to play the Imperm. And the Ash is just generic. I feel that the Ash doesn't really need much of an explanation. Then moving on to our standard trap lineup that I have. This is, I've been very back and forth on this, but this is what I'm playing with right now. I think it's good. I think there are some things that could change, but it also depends on the variation you're going for. So I have 3 Strike and 3 Judgment. These are the only other traps that we play 3 ofs in the deck, because it is really short on space. I am actually playing 41 cards. I wanted to cut it down to 40, but I just couldn't find the ability to do so, so I had to stick at 41, unfortunately, but that's okay. The deck still runs perfectly fine at 41. It's just a matter of whether or not you really, really, really hate playing 40 cards or 41 cards, depending on like your personal preference. If you hate playing 41, then obviously cut a card. That's fully up to you. But the 41st card that we played was actually 1 copy of Imperial Order, because like, it's Imperial Order. Why wouldn't you play this card in a trap deck? Like, it just seems really, really good. So the Judgments are obviously good to negate whatever. The Strikes are good to negate summons and monster effects, and then the Order just shuts your opponent down if they're playing a lot of spell cards. So that's really good. Then the last 3 cards that we do play, though, like I said, the Order is the 41st card. But it's Imperial Order, so we had to. But the last thing that we play here is 3 Pot of Prosperity. Now, I know I had just mentioned before that the deck is basically going to be budget. So if you were looking at this going, wow, now I think I can afford Altergeist, but then now I see the Prosperity, and I don't think I can, because that's another $300 something, if not more, to get your playset of Prosperity. Well, the good news is that you can play cards that are cheaper. You can play copies of Anti-Spell. You can play Pot of Duality, stuff like that. You can play Secret Village of the Spellcasters. Like, those are all viable main deck cards that you can play in this deck. You can play another set of hand traps if you wanted to. That's perfectly acceptable. But I have the Prosperities, so I play the Prosperities. That's just my personal preference. But that is the main deck. We're going to go ahead and jump on over to the extra deck now and take a quick peek at our setup. Okay, so extra deck time. The extra deck is pretty basic, I'm not going to lie. I don't think this extra deck is going to shock many people. It's in my opinion, just kind of simple, which is what I want most of my decks to be. I want them to be simple but functional. That's the entire purpose of almost every single deck that I put together, is simplistic, with a high amount of functionality to it. So we play 3 copies of Altergeist Hextia, because this card is absolutely bonkers. If you can get 2 of these out on the board, your opponent basically just loses. There's not really a way for them to do much after that. So the 3 Hextia is really good. The fact that it's a spell trap negation is very good too. And obviously, you know, the fact that if it's sent from your field to graveyard, being able to add an Altergeist card from deck to hand is actually very, very relevant. Gets you access to more cards like another Multi-Faker. Then we play 1 copy of Linkuriboh, 1 copy of Anima, 1 copy of Almirage, and 1 copy of Artemis for basically everything that we're going to be linking a copy of Meliseek off for. So basically you're going to normal summon Meliseek and make one of these 4 cards depending on your situation, and all of them are acceptable cards. If you want to kind of make this slightly cheaper, you don't have to play the Artemis. You can always just play a second Linkuriboh or a second Almirage, whatever your preference may be. But I just played the Artemis because I had it. It's a spellcaster, which is pretty good. So I like those 4 cards. Then for the Link 2s, we play 1 Hida and 1 Nightmare Phoenix. So the Hida, it can come up because you do have the Almirage and you do have the Phoenix. So there are going to be times where you can use the Hida, and it does come up. It's not as frequently. It's the 1 card in the extra deck that I've thought about swapping out for something else, but it's still a very, very reasonable and acceptable card. And then the Nightmare Phoenix popping back row is just should be basic by now. Everyone should understand why I play that. It shouldn't be much of a question. Then we play 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn. This card also doesn't really need an explanation. It's just more and more spot removal, which you need in the game. You just need to remove cards off the field, and Unicorn does that. Then we have 1 copy of Selene and 1 copy of Access Code. You can always use the Hida to summon something from your opponent's card, then go into the Selene, and then you can do the Access Code combo. So keep in mind that is very, very relevant and can come up more frequently than you think. And then the Access Code is just really good overall because, I mean, it's Access Code. Why wouldn't you want to play this card? And the fact that it's getting a reprint in Maximum Gold also makes this deck a little bit cheaper too. So I figure it was something worth showing off. That way everyone who watches the channel who may not want to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars can save some money somewhere. But those are all the Link monsters. Moving on to the targets that we're going to be sending off of Nadir Servant and Dogmatika Punishment. I play 2 copies of Elder Entity Entis. I think that playing 2 copies of this is pretty darn good, in addition to the 1 copy of Titaniclad. These are the only non-Link monsters that we play in the extra deck. And I personally feel that this is a very, very good selection of Link monsters to be, or non-Link monsters to be playing, because the Dogmatika Punishment is obviously going to be something that you're most likely going to be using to send Entis, because then you're going to get a secondary pop, which is really, really good. But then the Titaniclad also can come up too, because it's going to be able to get you your Fleur-de-Lis, which is fantastic if you can just send it off of like Nadir Servant. And then you can go ahead and grab your Ecclesia, and then, you know, you get to use your Ecclesia to search punishment, and then the end phase, the Titaniclad will search for your Fleur-de-Lis. So it's just really, really good. I think that this is a very good lineup overall, and it works phenomenally. But that is the entirety of the extra deck. We're going to go ahead and jump on over to the side deck so you guys can see what we toss in for this up and coming new meta, because it is a new meta coming up. So please stay tuned. Okay, so looking at our side deck now, you can already see one of the side deck cards that we have, which, you know, I try and put the least obvious of side deck cards on the top. That way you guys can be a little surprised at the minimum with everything else that's going to be included. But we will obviously start off with our 3 copies of Nibiru, the Primal Being, because being able to outboards with a card like this is fantastic. There's no doubt about it. I think that Nibiru just provides a similar but also extremely different functionality as a card like Max C does, which, by the way, I still think Max C can come back to 3. I've made it clear in videos before. There's no reason Max C can't be at 3. If you disagree, then I'm sorry that you're bad at the game. You should just quit playing while you're ahead of yourself. But we play the 3 Nibiru because Max C is currently banned because Konami TCG does not have any brain cells. Then the other 2 hand traps that we play are 3 copies of Cycle Reader and 3 copies of Token Collector. So the Cycle Reader, as many people know, is for Drytron. I didn't think that would need an explanation, so that's literally all that it's there for, is to go ahead and make Drytron cry a little bit, because now their Ben 10 isn't going to resolve, and whatever else they have engraved isn't going to resolve either. And then the Token Collector, I'm sure most people know that this is going to be primarily for your Sword Soul deck matchup, because like you just want to get rid of their tokens, and it puts another body on your board, which is kind of cool. So Token Collector, fantastic card, really, really powerful, and it hurts them a lot. And I already mentioned what the Cycle Reader does. So those are the hand traps that we side deck. Then a card that I mentioned before that you can main deck if you're playing on a budget, but I actually side deck it because I think it's so good, is 3 Secret Village of the Spellcaster. So 3 Secret Village is really, really good, and the reason I opted to go with this over a card like Anti-Spell Fragrance is that your opponent can chain to Anti-Spell, but with Secret Village, if you're going first, your opponent has nothing to like even activate because it's your turn, so they have nothing they can even do, which makes Secret Village a very powerful card. I love this card so much, puts in so much work, and just making it so your opponent can't even try and play a spell card is honestly the best part. Like, this card just makes people so angry so quickly. And then the last card that we play, we have to play another going second card, and that is 3 copies of Evenly Matched. So I feel that in this deck, this card is insane. If you open up this and Multi-Faker, I mean, you just kind of win. Like, let's be realistic here. There's not much your opponent is going to be able to do if you just evenly them and then you just do the Multi-Faker on resolution. Like, they basically just lose the game if they're playing something like a back row deck. Tri-Brigade basically loses to it too, which is also insane. So like that's just something to keep in mind. You can just completely out it. And considering in Burst of Destiny, we have I think it's Heavenly something, whatever the card that's support for back row decks. I can't remember what it's called, and I apologize. It's a really, really good card, though. Basically a new boss monster for trap decks. A lot of people are going to be playing Evenly over Lightning Storm, and like Cosmics over Lightning Storm or Twin Twister, things like that. So keep in mind that if you don't have Evenlys, you should probably pick them up. If you don't have Cosmic Cyclones, you should also pick them up, because they are going to be extremely useful in the near future. But that essentially rounds up the entirety of our main deck, our extra deck, and our side deck, which means, once again, is another week in the books of providing you guys with another fantastic deck profile. I know that there was a poll that the vote went to me showing off my locals a little bit more, and I plan on doing that within the next couple of weeks. I do have a slightly busy schedule, and I'm trying to get everything, under control rather than letting it, completely destroy my mental health. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I try and get to my locals and film some locals, whether it's feature matches or I interview the shop owners, one or the other, in the very near future. But you will obviously get to see that when it comes out. For right now, it's going to be the deck profiles, because that's essentially what I have time for. But please do stay tuned for the cool and awesome content that will be coming out within the next month. I'm 100% posting it within the next month, so don't you guys even worry. It will be a thing. But for right now, that is Team Yugi Phils signing out.